One of the Nigeria's CEOs has the just concluded 2018 edition of the Africa CEO Forum in the Ivorian capital of Abidjan was Abdulsamad Rabiu, the executive chairman of the BUA group, having their fingers in the business of cement. Of course, if you heard about Sokoto Cement, they're called the CCNN PLC, listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and another cement facility in Edo State. So we caught up with Abdulsamad Rabiu, who is the executive chairman. I had a few questions for him after he sat on the panel that discusses the business of doing business in Nigeria and other things. And I had a few questions for him about his doing business in Nigeria and the challenges he faced. We also used the opportunity, however, to ask him about how he is sorting out the differences, or what we call a clash. He says it was a misunderstanding with the Dangote group when it comes to the disputed mine in Edo State, and he spoke to us on that, as well as whether he is interested yet in stepping out of Nigeria into the rest of the continent. Let's take a listen to this one-to-one with Abdulsamad Rabiu of the BUA Group.
We are able to use coal to power our kiln. We are also able to use coal to power some of our power plants. So with that, the energy issue is going to be less, problematic. As you know, Sokoto, because of the distance, from the ports, and because we do not have gas there, we have to use a lot of LPFO. So that is the problem. So I believe by the time, we commission, the 2 lines this year, again, as I said, we'll be in the region of about 8 million tons, and we'll see if, there is a possibility for us to add another line in Sokoto and also in other parts of the country.
If you look at your total investment, how much really is the BUA Group worth?
Well, it's difficult to say that, because it depends on how you look at it. If you look at the enterprise value, it depends on what multiples you are looking at. The business is doing very well. But it depends. It depends on how you look at it. For me, the most important thing is to create jobs, to have a formidable business so that at the end of the day, even if we decide, to divest some of the, business, we'll get a good value. So to be honest with you, it will be very difficult to exactly say how much the value of the business is, because it depends on how you value it. Some people look at, enterprise value. Some people look at, multiples, and some people would say, oh, it should be multiples of 5, multiples of 10, multiples of 12. It all depends. But I think, I haven't really, worked on that yet.
Would you therefore be thinking of listing the BUA Group or any of the companies on the stock exchange?
We definitely are going to list, the cement business, because I think we should also give the opportunity to other, to people to come and also participate. Because if you have such a big business and the business is doing very well, you should give people the chance and the opportunity to come and participate, and also, because that way you can, unlock some of the, capital that you've invested and go and do other things. So we are seriously looking into that.
How soon?
We don't know. We are looking at it. We are looking into it.
One of the areas of which the Africa CEO Forum, like other forum, is encouraging African CEOs and business leaders is to do cross-border investments. So, are you thinking of expanding your footprints beyond Nigeria into other African countries in terms of brick and mortar?
Yeah, well, you see, it is something that we are considering. But for me, Nigeria, to be honest, is my comfort zone. Nigeria is where the market is. We have 180 million people. It's the biggest economy in Africa. The market is there. A lot of people think it is difficult to do business in Nigeria, but to be honest with you, it is not as difficult as people, make it to be. So, to me, I would rather be in Nigeria for now. I would, of course, want to venture out into other countries, in Africa. But it is very difficult because there are so many challenges also, outside Nigeria, and you have to consider all of those, challenges. Nigeria, if you are in Nigeria, yes, it is difficult, it is a bit challenging, but you are there and you can probably navigate easier. There is, of course, the benefit is there for you to have footprints all over Africa, because it gives you the exposure, to be like a Pan-African, group, because they are all over. But then again, I think it is important that one is not distracted, in doing so. So I think I'll give it a bit of time before looking into doing something in other countries in Africa. Because basically, if you look at what is happening now, you see that most of the companies that are operating, Nigerian companies that are operating outside Nigeria, they are having challenges, in some areas, and it is very difficult. If you look at Tanzania, for example, it is a very, very good market. But in the last 2-3 years, there are quite a lot of issues going on in that country. So it will be difficult for you to be able to operate in such a country because policies change easily, or you go and invest in a country and you make so much money in the country, but you are not even able to repatriate the money out of the country. So to me, I think Nigeria is a good place to be for now.
At this forum, for example, what new things are you listening to, are you hearing, or you're expecting to hear and learn from other CEOs, perhaps other policymakers and those who are here, that will help leverage what your business, your group in Nigeria?
I have actually interacted with a lot of people, and one of the things that is I'm hearing from many CEOs is the fact that there must be synergy between African CEOs and also between the governments of Africa and the private sector, because that way we can add a lot more value to what we are doing. If you look at most of the countries in Africa, we have a lot of resources yet untapped. If you look at DRC, for example, or look at even South Africa. South Africa today, they are producing almost, I believe, 100 million tons of iron ore. They produce steel, but a lot of that iron ore is being exported. One of the mines in South Africa that belongs to Anglo-American, Kumba Mines, produces about 45 million tons of iron ore. And if you look at iron ore, it is something that you need to be able to produce steel. That is something we have in Nigeria. And Nigeria is in this unique situation where it has iron ore, it has gas, it has coal. Not many countries in the world have that, yet we do not produce steel. We need to work together with the governments and also private sector to see how we can tap most of these opportunities. If, for example, we are importing $3 to $4 billion worth of steel every year, yet we do not have a fully integrated steel plant, what does that tell you? There is some sort of disconnect.
Are you interested in the solid mineral sector?
The mining sector the mining sector is a very important sector.
Are you interested?
We are very much interested in that. Hence the reason why we divested in our flour milling and pasta and what have you, simply because it requires importation of raw materials. So I'm actually shying away from any business that would need me to import raw materials. I would rather be in a business that I have my raw materials locally and that I'm able to use local people and local talent to process whatever I have, and then either use it locally for local consumption or maybe even export. As I keep saying, the cement industry is a very important area, and look at where we are today. And as I keep telling people, what has happened in the cement industry should be replicated in many other industries, because it is a critical, input in doing like construction and what have you. If you didn't have that, you would have to import it. And look at the challenges one would have had. So the same thing with steel. That is why I'm saying, the partnership between government and the private sector. Because if I were in government, I would, for example, look at what areas of industries or businesses require or use the most foreign exchange in Nigeria, and then I'll look at those areas and see, are we using mostly local raw materials or are we importing? If we are importing, I'll call the people that are involved in that business and say, look, how do we help each other? We'll give you whatever support you need, just like what happened in cement or what is happening in the sugar industry today, for us, be it dairy, be it steel, be it anything that requires foreign exchange to the tune of say $1 billion and and more. And still, it's $3 to $4 billion we are spending to import dairy products, the same thing, over billions of dollars, and so many other areas. So if government can look at it and say, look, we need to see what we can do to help each other, I think that would be a good thing. We would be able to create jobs, would be able to be self-sufficient, would be able to even export, and then would be able to, serve a lot of foreign exchange, And I think these are some of the things we're hearing from the CEOs, and see how we can, partner together and see what we can do to actually achieve most of those things. The Prime Minister, or the Vice President rather, of Cote d'Ivoire did mention that between Ivory Coast, or Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana, they produce 64% of the entire world production of cocoa. Just these two countries, and in Africa. And that is $105 billion worth of business annually. Do you know what they get? 5% of that. And they produce 64% of the cocoa in the whole world. But they only get 5% of that, which is about 5 billion, which is peanuts. So they produce 64%, yet they get only 5%. So this is where, I think the governments need to sit down and see what can we do so that at least we can get value addition, we'll be able to get a little bit more money. I'm not saying that the entire $100 billion should come to Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, but, let it be at least 20%, 25%. If, I was quite, surprised when I heard that, because I didn't know. In fact, additional, the AFD president added that if you add Nigeria and Niger, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, 75% of the world production is just from those 4 countries. So these are some of the things that I think we need to look at and see what we can do to add value.
You spoke about African companies and CEOs cooperating and collaborating together. But of course, we all know that when big businesses work in certain jurisdictions, there are bound to be clashes. So the BUA group is having some clash with the Dangote group in Nigeria. How are you resolving that?
No, Dangote is not really, I wouldn't call it a clash. I would call it some sort of misunderstanding. And Dangote is a good friend of mine. He's my brother. We had the misunderstanding. It is being addressed. It is being resolved. And to be honest, I don't think that would be an issue whatsoever. Because if you look at it, it's one mine out of quite a few mines that we have. And Dangote was approached by somebody. He didn't understand it. He understands the situation now, and I have the greatest respect for Alhaji Aliko Dangote, and he's a businessman, of course, so am I, and we're all trying to protect, our businesses. But I'm confident this is not an issue that will linger for long. We're addressing the issue, and it is as good as settled.